What would you do if your roommate suddenly asked to swap bedrooms with you, just because your room supposedly had better energy? Emily never imagined that something as simple as choosing a bedroom could turn into a real problem. When she first moved into the two-bedroom apartment with her roommate Sarah, everything was clear and fair. Emily took the smaller room, paid a little less in rent, but enjoyed the soft glow of morning sunlight. Sarah got the bigger room, closer to the bathroom, and both of them were perfectly happy until yesterday. That evening, Sarah stepped into Emily's room with an oddly serious look on her face. "Emily, I want to switch rooms with you. Your room has better vibes, and I just don't feel right in mine anymore." Emily froze, caught between confusion and disbelief. It wasn't just about packing up her things or redecorating. It was about the awkward pressure of the moment. Say no and risk upsetting her roommate. Give in and disrupt the fragile peace of their home. What started as an ordinary living arrangement was suddenly turning into an unexpected test of boundaries, friendship, and the strange power of good vibes. Emily, a 21-year-old college student, prided herself on being organized, thoughtful, and just a little bit of a perfectionist. To her, a private space wasn't just for walls, and adore it was her sanctuary. Her room was where she could study late into the night, recharge after long days of lectures, and simply breathe without interruption. When she and her roommate Sarah signed a lease on a cozy two-room apartment 6 months earlier, Emily deliberately chose the smaller bedroom. It was a practical decision. She would pay a slightly lower share of the rent, but it was also the room blessed with warm, golden sunlight every morning from the very first weekend. Emily poured her heart into making the space her own. She hung a few favorite prints above her desk, tucked a tiny potted plant beside her laptop, and lined the shelves with neatly stacked textbooks and journals. Soft throw pillows and a small reading lamp turned the compact room into something more than just a place to sleep. It became a haven. Whenever she closed the door behind her, she felt a sense of calm settle over her quiet refuge where she could sip tea, study in peace, or curl up with a novel while the morning light streamed through the curtains. Sarah, at 25, couldn't have been more different. Outgoing, cheerful, and quick to laugh, she carried a playful energy that filled every room she entered. Yet beneath that brightness, Sarah was sensitive and deeply attuned to things she called vibes, the invisible energy of a space. When they moved in, Sarah naturally gravitated toward the larger bedroom. It was closer to the bathroom, spacious enough for her growing collection of clothes and art prints, and perfect for entertaining friends. Emily gladly agreed. The arrangement felt balanced, even ideal. Emily had her cozy, sunlit nook, while Sarah enjoyed a roomy, convenient space to match her lively personality. For the first several months, life in the apartment was nearly Mornings began with the smell of fresh coffee that Emily brewed and left on the kitchen counter, an unspoken ritual that Sarah always appreciated. Over breakfast, they would chat about Emily's upcoming exams, or laugh over the latest gossip from Sarah's workplace. Weekends brought movie marathons on the couch, spontaneous cooking experiments that sometimes ended in smoke and laughter, and late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. Their friendship seemed easy and natural, built on mutual respect for each other's habits and the understanding that everyone needs a little personal space. Emily especially cherished the quiet joy of retreating to her room after a long day. There, she could sink into her desk chair, watch the sunlight fade into a soft evening glow, and feel completely at peace. It was her corner of the world, a place where her thoughts could settle and her energy could reset. She never questioned how important that little room had become to her, but hidden within that sense of comfort was something Emily couldn't have anticipated. Sarah's fascination with energy and good vibes had always seemed harmless, even charming. Emily never imagined that her roommate's belief sand, the very qualities that made her room feel so safe, would soon spark a conflict neither of them saw coming. The first 2 months in the apartment passed in a haze of comfort and easy friendship. Emily and Sarah slipped into a shared routine as if they'd been living together for years. Mornings were simple and warm. Emily, always the early riser, would pad softly into the kitchen to brew a fresh pot of coffee, while Sarah busied herself with toast or scrambled eggs. They'd exchange sleepy smiles over steaming mugs, chatting about Emily's upcoming exams or the latest funny story from Sarah's office. Weekends were even better. Sometimes they turned their tiny living room into a movie theater, complete with popcorn and mismatched blankets. Other times, they played amateur chefs, experimenting with new recipes, some ending in triumph, others in smoke and laughter. On quieter evenings, they simply sat cross-legged on the couch for hours, losing track of time as they talked about school, work, relationships, and the little quirks of life. For Emily, the apartment quickly became more than just a place to live. Her small bedroom, though modest in size, was filled with soft morning light that spilled across her desk and bookshelves. She decorated it with care-framed prints on the wall, a small plant on the windowsill, neatly arranged stacks of textbooks. It was her sanctuary, a warm, glowing space where she could study, unwind, and recharge after long days of lectures. Sarah, meanwhile, took pride in her larger room. It offered plenty of space for her clothes, art supplies, and the eclectic decor she loved to rearrange on a whim. At first, both of them were perfectly happy, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. Sarah's once bright energy grew heavy. She'd been dealing with mounting stress at work, a faltering relationship, and restless nights that left her bleary-eyed in the mornings. Little setbacks piled up until she began to wonder if something more than bad luck was at play. The thought crept in quietly at first, but soon it began to take root. Maybe it wasn't just her job or her relationship. Maybe it was the room itself. One late afternoon, Sarah returned home looking different, tense, almost unsettled. She lingered outside Emily's door, her hand hovering in hesitation before she finally knocked. Emily, surprised, opened the door to find her roommate standing there, eyes shadowed with fatigue and uncertainty. "Hey," Emily said softly. "Everything okay?" Sarah stepped inside and took a breath as if steadying herself. "Emily, I think we should switch rooms," she began, her voice slow but firm. "I don't think the energy in my room is good anymore. Everything in my life feels like it's falling apart, work, sleep, even small things, and I can't shake the feeling that it's because of where I'm sleeping. Your room gets so much light. It feels positive, balanced. I need a space like that to get myself back on track." Emily froze, caught off guard. Her eyes drifted around the room she had so carefully created, the neat bookshelves, the soft glow from the window, the little details that made it hers. This wasn't just a room, it was her refuge. She hesitated before answering. "Sarah, I get that you're going through a rough time," she said gently, "but I've already settled in. Finals are coming up, and moving everything now would be..." "A lot," Sarah's brow furrowed. If you really care about our friendship, you'd help me with this, she said, her voice edging toward a plea. It's just a room switch. It's not that hard. Emily took a steadying breath, keeping her tone calm. I care about you, of course I do. But switching rooms right now isn't something I can handle. I can help you redecorate, though maybe we can add more plants, rearrange the furniture to bring in more light. We can make your room feel better. Sarah shook her head, frustration flashing in her eyes. It's not the same. The light in here is different. The universe. It favors this room. It favors you. The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. Emily felt her stomach tighten. The room that had once been her safe retreat now felt charged, as if the very walls were listening. She understood that Sarah was searching for comfort, desperate for something to explain the chaos in her life. But Emily also knew she couldn't give up the space she needed most. What Sarah framed as a simple request, just a room swap, wasn't simple at all. It was a clash between the tangible and the intangible, between Emily's need for stability and Sarah's faith in unseen forces. Standing there in the soft afternoon light, Emily wondered how she could protect her boundaries without letting their friendship fracture. It was the first real crack in the peaceful life they had built together. A small moment that hinted at the storm quietly gathering beyond the walls of their tiny apartment. The days after that tense conversation stretched out like a slow, heavy fog. The apartment, once filled with warmth and the easy rhythm of shared living, felt different now, charged, as if the air itself had gained weight. What had always been a cheerful, sunlit refuge was beginning to feel like a space where unspoken words floated like ghosts, lingering in corners and hallways. Sarah, once the lively heart of the household, changed almost overnight. Her usual morning chatter comments about the weather, a funny meme she'd seen, plans for the weekend disappeared. Instead, she moved through the apartment like a shadow. Doors that used to stay open were now kept firmly shut. When she passed Emily in the hallway, she offered nothing more than a faint, distracted nod, if she acknowledged her at all. The easy laughter that used to spill out of the living room during late-night movie marathons was replaced by the soft thud of closed doors and the faint hum of an air conditioner. Emily noticed every detail. She noticed the way Sarah no longer brewed tea at night, the way her footsteps sounded hurried and deliberate, the way her voice when she did speak was flat, almost mechanical. Coming home from class no longer felt like a relief. The small apartment, once a safe landing after long days of lectures and study sessions, now felt like unfamiliar territory, like stepping into a room where someone had argued moments before you arrived. Emily tried to hold on to her sanctuary, her small, carefully curated room where morning sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors, warming her plants and the neat stack of books on her desk. She had always loved waking to the soft glow of dawn, the way the light painted the walls a buttery gold and made even the smallest moments reading, writing, sipping coffee feel almost sacred. But lately, even inside her own room, she could feel the tension creeping in. It was in the muffled sound of Sarah's door closing. It was in the silence that stretched too long across the hallway. It was in the way her chest tightened before she stepped out each morning, bracing for the chill of unspoken resentment. Final exams loomed on the horizon, a mountain of deadlines and late nights that already threatened her sense of balance. Normally, Emily would have thrown herself into her studies, using the quiet of her room as a shield against the chaos of university life. But now the quiet wasn't peaceful, it was loaded. Even the comforting ritual of making coffee felt different. When she poured the water and listened to the soft gurgle of the kettle, she half expected Sarah to emerge and break the silence, to offer some sign that things were okay. But the kitchen remained empty. Emily tried to bridge the gap. Each morning she greeted Sarah with a warm good morning, even when all she got in return was a barely audible hey. She invited her to dinner, suggested a movie night, even offered to help rearrange Sarah's room to bring in more light. But Sarah deflected each attempt with polite but unmistakable distance. "Not tonight," she would say, or maybe another time, without meeting Emily's eyes. Each rejection landed like a small, precise cut. Inside her own room, Sarah was unraveling. Work deadlines piled up. Her relationship troubles gnawed at her, filling her mind with late-night what-ifs. Sleep became a restless loop of half-dreams and sudden awakenings. To Sarah, none of this was coincidence. She was certain the universe was trying to tell her something, and the message was clear. Her room's energy was wrong. Too heavy, too dark. Each time she walked past Emily's door and caught a glimpse of the soft golden light spilling onto the hallway floor, the feeling sharpened. That room wasn't just prettier or cozier, was charged with something she desperately needed but couldn't reach. Sarah began to resent the way Emily's plants seemed to thrive, the way her room looked alive even at dusk. Why does Emily get the light? She thought bitterly. Why does the universe favor her? In her mind, Emily's refusal to switch rooms wasn't just a matter of logistics. It felt personal, like the universe had drawn a line, giving Emily all the good energy and leaving her to wrestle with the bad. For Emily, the tension became an invisible cage. She cared for Sarah and hated seeing her unhappy, but she also felt a quiet panic at the thought of giving up her safe space. Her room wasn't just for walls. It was the only place that kept her grounded while exams threatened to pull her apart. Every time she considered giving in, a sharp unease stopped her. If I agree to this, she wondered, will this be the start of something bigger? Will every boundary I set from now on be questioned? The silence between them thickened until it felt alive. They passed each other like polite strangers, each carrying questions they were too afraid to voice. Sarah lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, her mind looping through the same bitter thought. If Emily really cared about me, why can't she just give up the room? It's just a room. Emily, on the other side of the wall, stared at her own ceiling, wrestling with guilt and resolve. Am I being selfish? She asked herself. Or is this what it means to protect my own boundaries? Neither of them spoke the words, but both could feel the truth pressing in like a storm front. Something between them had cracked. The apartment that had once been a shared refuge was no longer neutral ground. It was a quiet battlefield, where no one shouted but every silence carried the weight of an argument unsaid. The tension in the apartment had been stretching like an invisible rubber band for days, and Emily could feel it pulling at every quiet corner of their once happy home. Each night when she turned her key in the lock, she half expected to hear the familiar hum of music drifting from Sarah's room or the cheerful sound of her roommate laughing at a podcast. Instead, there was only the faint creak of floorboards and the low hum of the refrigerator. The silence was heavy, like a storm cloud that refused to break. Emily knew she couldn't let it go on forever. She missed the easy warmth they used to share, and the weight of Sarah's coldness was starting to seep into her own mood, making studying feel impossible. After a long day of classes, she finally worked up the courage to knock gently on Sarah's door. The door opened a few inches, revealing Sarah's tired face. Her eyes looked darker than usual, and there was a kind of guarded pride in the way she held her shoulders. Emily forced a small, hopeful smile. "Hey," she said softly. "Can we talk for a minute?" Sarah hesitated, then pulled the door open just wide enough to let Emily in. Her room was dim, the curtains drawn tight, even though the last bits of sunset still lingered outside. Emily glanced around, noticing how stagnant the air felt compared to the warm, airy glow of her own room. "I know things have been weird," Emily began, careful to keep her voice calm. "I can tell you're stressed, and I hate that it feels like this between us. I really want to help, but I can't switch rooms. I've got finals coming up, and everything is already set up. It would be a huge mess." Sarah crossed her arms but didn't interrupt. Emily took that as a small victory and pressed on. "But," she continued, "what if we work on this room instead? Maybe we can make it feel different, brighter, calmer. Sometimes a few changes can shift the energy. It might not be my room, but maybe we can bring some of that good vibe in here." For a long moment, Sarah didn't respond. Her eyes darted to the curtains, to the piles of clothes on the chair, then back to Emily. Finally, she let out a slow breath and gave a reluctant nod. "Okay," she said quietly. "I guess it's worth a try." Emily's shoulders relaxed in relief. "Great, let's do a little room makeover tonight. Nothing crazy, just small changes to invite more light and positive energy." They started by pulling the curtains wide open, even though the sky outside was quickly fading into night. Emily dragged Sarah's desk closer to the window so the morning sun could reach it more easily. She fetched a couple of small potted plants from her own room, carefully placing them near the window and on the bookshelf. "Plants are supposed to absorb negative energy," Emily said with a playful grin, trying to lighten the mood. "Plus, they're cute." Sarah managed a faint smile, though her eyes still carried a hint of doubt. "It's nice, but it's not the same light as your room." Emily didn't let the comment discourage her. She grabbed a soft yellow lamp from the hallway closet and plugged it in near the bed, adjusting the shade until the glow warmed the entire corner. "There," Emily said, stepping back. "Sunshine in a bulb. Instant good vibes." Sarah tilted her head, considering the change. "It's better," she admitted, though her voice lacked enthusiasm. "But it still doesn't feel like yours," Emily chuckled. "That's because it's yours, and that's a good thing." The makeover continued. Emily swapped out the heavy, dark bedspread for a lighter, cream-colored one Sarah had tucked away in her closet. She hung a string of fairy lights round the headboard, their soft twinkle filling the room with a cozy glow. At one point, Emily even pulled out a small wind chime she'd kept from a flea market trip and held it up like a magician revealing a secret weapon. "People say wind chimes invite positive energy," she teased. "Maybe the universe just needs a little musical reminder." Sarah let out a small, unexpected laugh, the first genuine sound of happiness Emily had heard from her in days. It was quick and quiet, but it was enough to remind Emily of the roommates she'd shared so many fun nights with. They spent nearly an hour moving furniture, rearranging knickknacks, and testing different lamp positions. Every time Emily suggested a change, Sarah would study it with a skeptical frown, as if waiting for some invisible signal from the universe to confirm whether the adjustment was good enough. When they finally stepped back to take in the transformed room, the difference was obvious. The space felt brighter, softer, more open. The air itself seemed to breathe a little easier. "So," Emily said, placing her hands on her hips, "better." Sarah looked around slowly, her expression unreadable. It's nice. Really nice, actually. She paused, then added almost reluctantly, but it still doesn't feel like your room. There's something about the light in there. It's just different. The universe favors that space, I swear. Emily pressed a hand to her forehead in mock exasperation. I'm going to need the universe to send a written notice, if that's the case, she said, pretending to search the air for an invisible envelope. Sarah cracked another smile, this one a little wider than before. For a few fleeting minutes, the tension that had been hanging over them loosened, replaced by soft laughter and the familiar ease of their friendship. But when the laughter faded, the underlying problem remained, quietly stubborn. Emily could feel it in the silence that followed, like a shadow just out of sight. She had done everything she could: plants, lights, furniture, even a wind chime, but no amount of decorating could compete with the deep, unshakable belief Sarah held about the room next door. Later that night, as Emily returned to her own bedroom, she paused at the threshold and looked back at Sarah's door. The faint glow of fairy lights spilled into the hallway, casting gentle patterns across the floor. It was warm and inviting, but Emily knew Sarah still felt something missing. Emily crawled into her own bed with a mix of satisfaction and helplessness. She had really tried to meet Sarah halfway, to bridge the gap with effort and care. Yet deep down, she understood the truth. You can rearrange furniture, swap lamps, and hang wind chimes all you want. But when someone believes the universe itself is against them, logic and love may never be enough. In her room next door, Sarah lay awake beneath the twinkling lights, staring at the ceiling. The air smelled faintly of new bedding and potted plants, but the heaviness in her chest remained, no matter how many changes they made. The quiet certainty inside her refused to fade. The universe still favored Emily's room, and she was still trapped in a space the stars had forgotten. The Energy Project had brought a few smiles and a brief return to laughter, but both women sensed the same uneasy truth. The makeover was only a temporary truce, not a solution. The quiet war between practicality and belief, between friendship and boundaries, still smoldered beneath the surface, waiting for the next spark. In the days following their failed energy makeover, the little apartment slowly transformed into a place Emily no longer looked forward to coming home to. Once, the sound of her key turning in the lock had meant safety and comfort. A small oasis after the chaos of classes and exams. Now, each click of the door felt like a warning bell. The moment she stepped inside, a quiet tension settled over her chest, invisible but undeniable, as if the air itself had thickened. Her own bedroom, once a sanctuary filled with soft light and the smell of fresh laundry, had begun to feel less like a home and more like a fragile fortress. She would close the door behind her and lean against it, breathing in the faint scent of her lavender candle, willing herself to relax. But the comfort was temporary, brittle. No matter how carefully she arranged her books or folded her blankets, the unease outside seeped through the thin walls like a draft she couldn't block. Emily had always been someone who thrived on order. Clean lines, organized shelves, the quiet rhythm of a well-kept space, these were the things that grounded her. The apartment had once been her place to recharge after a long day of studying, a private corner of the world where she could shed the noise of the city. But now, even inside her own room, she couldn't fully breathe. It wasn't anything Sarah said directly. It was the subtler signals, the soft but deliberate closing of a door down the hall, the faint shuffle of feet in the kitchen at odd hours, the way Sarah's presence lingered like a shadow even when she wasn't in sight, a half-heard sigh, the almost imperceptible pause before footsteps retreated. Each sound sharpened Emily's awareness, making her body tense in ways she couldn't control. At night, the tension became almost unbearable. Emily would lie awake staring at the faint patterns of light on her ceiling, the low hum of the refrigerator amplifying the silence. Sleep came late, if at all, and when it finally did, it was restless. She woke each morning with a dull headache and heavy limbs, her thoughts foggy as she faced another day of classes and the looming pressure of final exams. The apartment once her refuge was now a silent battleground, and she was losing ground one sleepless night at a time. Yet Emily wasn't the only one carrying the weight. Behind the door of the newly decorated room, Sarah was fighting her own quiet war. Despite the string lights, the warm glow of the yellow lamp, and the carefully arranged plants, nothing felt right. The small victories of their energy project had faded within days, leaving the same uneasy emptiness in their wake. Sarah couldn't explain it in logical terms, but she felt certain that something cosmic was at play. The universe, in her mind, was tilting toward Emily. Emily's room, with its soft, natural light and effortless calm, seemed blessed, while her own remained stubbornly neutral, no matter how many adjustments they made. Each evening, as she sat at her desk, Sarah found herself staring toward the thin wall separating their rooms, imagining the peaceful glow she was convinced Emily lived within. It wasn't just envy, though she hated to admit that word even to herself. It was a gnawing sense of being left behind, as if the stars themselves had drawn a quiet line between them. Whenever she heard a muffled laugh from Emily's side-phone call with a friend, a snippet of a TV show, an irrational pang of loneliness twisted in her chest, Sarah told herself. She wasn't angry at Emily. After all, Emily hadn't done anything wrong. But the feeling of unfairness, of cosmic imbalance, clung to her like static. She would catch herself glancing toward the door whenever Emily moved about the apartment, her ears tuned to the smallest sounds. The creak of floorboards became reminders of what she lacked, and the cheerful hum of Emily's nightly routines felt like proof that the universe was offering her roommate something she couldn't reach. The more Sarah tried to ignore it, the stronger it grew. Jealousy settled in like a slow-burning ember, subtle but persistent, warming the space between them with a heat that wasn't comforting but corrosive. Their friendship, once effortless and filled with late-night jokes and spontaneous ice cream, now felt like a fragile bridge stretched over an ever-widening gap. Emily sensed it too, though neither of them said it aloud. Their interactions had become polite but stiff, each conversation a careful dance to avoid stepping on the cracks forming beneath their feet. They still exchanged small-talk comments about the weather, reminders about rent, but the easy laughter they once shared had vanished. Nights passed in this uneasy rhythm. Emily retreated further into her room, headphones on, trying to drown out the quiet pressure pressing through the walls. Sarah stayed in her own space, rearranging trinkets and adjusting the fairy lights in futile attempts to shift a feeling that lived entirely inside her. Both women were trapped, not by the apartment itself, but by the invisible weight of unspoken resentment and quiet fear. The makeover had been meant to heal the space, to bring warmth and balance. Instead, it had only revealed a harder truth: when belief runs deeper than reason, even friendship can begin to feel like a room with no door. where light struggles to enter no matter how many times you pull back the curtains. That night, the apartment felt different from the moment Emily turned the key. The hallway light flickered faintly as she stepped inside, the soft click of the lock behind her sounding more like a warning than a welcome. She had survived a brutal day back-to-back lectures, a nerve-wracking presentation, and the relentless pressure of looming exams. Her shoulders ached beneath the weight of her bag. All she wanted was a quiet evening, a simple meal, and a few precious hours of rest. But the air inside the apartment told her rest would not come easily. Sarah sat on the living room sofa, hunched forward with her elbows on her knees and her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The dim glow of the yellow lamp carved hard shadows across her face, highlighting the tension in her jaw. Papers, work reports, test results, something official was scattered across the coffee table, some neatly stacked, others crumpled into small, frustrated balls. Emily froze in the doorway, the exhaustion in her body momentarily forgotten. She set her bag down carefully, as though any sudden movement might shatter the fragile silence. "Sarah," she said softly, forcing her voice into a calm she didn't feel. "Hey, are you okay? You look upset." Sarah lifted her head. Her eyes were rimmed red, a mix of frustration and sleeplessness. When she spoke, her voice trembled but carried a sharp edge of certainty. "No, I'm not okay. I got my test results back today. They're worse than I expected. And work was a disaster. Everything that could go wrong did. And I know why." She leaned forward, her gaze locking on Emily's. "It's the room, Emily. I'm sure of it now. The energy in there is awful. Your room has the light. I can feel it. I need to switch. Please, I can't keep living like this." Emily's throat tightened. She had prepared herself for awkward small talk, maybe another evening of polite silence, but not this. She tried to swallow her exhaustion and answered gently, but weeks of tension were already pressing against the thin dam of her patience. "Sarah," she began carefully, "I've told you before. I can't switch rooms. We agreed on this when we moved in. I've helped you rearrange things, brought in plants, new lights, everything we could think of. But I need my space. My exams are coming up," and Sarah cut her off, standing so abruptly the papers on the table slid to the floor. Her eyes glistened with hurt and something fiercer, anger maybe, or desperation. "So that's it? Our friendship doesn't mean anything to you? I'm asking for one thing, just one thing, and you won't even consider it? If you cared about me, really cared, you'd help me. You'd do this for me." Emily felt her chest tighten. Her heart thudded against her ribs, each beat sharp and uneven. "This isn't about friendship," she said, her voice still measured but with an unmistakable steel beneath it. "This is about boundaries. We made an agreement. My room is smaller. I've built my study routine around it. I need stability right now. You can't just demand that I give up my space because of a feeling." Sarah's voice rose, raw and accusing. "All you ever think about is yourself. I'm drowning here, Emily, and all you care about are your exams. The universe clearly favors you and your precious little room, and you can't even share that." Something in Emily snapped. The frustration she'd been swallowing for weeks, every sleepless night, every tense meal, every unanswered text came rushing to the surface. "There is no universe picking sides, Sarah," she burst out, her words spilling fast and sharp. "We chose our rooms. We agreed. And I've tried God. I've tried to help you. I bought plants, lamps, I rearranged everything. I even played along with the energy stuff. But it's not the room. This is something you need to face, not me. Not the walls, not the sunlight, you. The apartment seemed to vibrate with their voices, the thin walls catching and echoing every word. Their argument rose and fell in waves, please, retorts, accusations, until the space that had once held laughter now felt like a cage of raw emotion. Then, suddenly, silence. Sarah stood frozen, her eyes glassy, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. Her lips trembled, but no words came. For a heartbeat, Emily thought she might cry or scream, but instead, Sarah simply turned away. Without another glance, she walked to her bedroom and closed the door. The soft click of the latch landed like a final verdict. Emily stayed rooted to the spot, her own breath coming fast and shallow. Her hands trembled at her sides. She wanted to knock on Sarah's door, to take it all back, to say something, anything that might repair the damage. But the words refused to form. The apartment felt heavier than ever, thick with everything they had said and everything they hadn't. Emily eventually retreated to her room, closing the door with slow, deliberate care. The lavender scent that usually calmed her felt cloying now, too sweet against the bitter taste of the fight. Hours passed, but sleep didn't come for either of them. Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every sharp word, every pleading look. In the next room, Sarah shifted restlessly, the faint creak of her mattress carrying through the quiet. Two friends, separated by a wall barely a few inches thick, lay trapped in the same silence, wondering whether a line had been crossed that could never be. Uncrossed, and night stretched on, long and merciless, as both women faced the same unspoken truth. Something in their friendship had cracked, and neither of them knew how war of fit could ever be repaired. The days following the argument were thick with an almost tangible silence. The apartment, once filled with soft music, late-night conversations, and bursts of shared laughter, now felt like a museum after closing hours. Every sound seemed amplified: the creak of the hallway floorboards, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the sharp click of a door latch. Emily noticed how even simple routines, making coffee in the morning, setting her books on the table, felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted movement at night. She lay awake, staring at the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through her curtains. Her mind replayed the confrontation like a broken record. Sarah's pleading voice, the hurt in her eyes, the slam of the bedroom door. Did I go too far? Was I too harsh? Emily wondered, though a quieter part of her insisted that boundaries were necessary. Yet the guilt lingered, twisting with fatigue from her upcoming exams. Sarah, meanwhile, retreated deep into her own storm of thoughts. Her room, supposedly the source of all her frustration, offered no comfort. The more she tried to fix it with small changes, the more hollow those efforts felt. She lit scented candles, rearranged her nightstand, even tried sleeping with the windows open to invite new energy, but nothing worked. Each night, she caught herself staring at the ceiling, realizing with a growing ache that the room had never been the problem. It was her. The job stress, the disappointing test score, the constant pressure to keep up it, had all built into a knot she'd been too afraid to face. Blaming the room was easier than admitting she felt lost. By the fifth day, the tension had become unbearable. Sarah could hear Emily moving around on the other side of the wall, their lives separated by nothing more than a thin layer of drywall. And yet they might as well have been on opposite sides of the planet. She missed the quiet jokes they shared during dinner, the late-night tea breaks when studying got tough. Most of all, she missed the feeling of being understood. That Saturday afternoon, the apartment was wrapped in a soft, fading light. The sun dipped low, spilling a pale gold glow through Sarah's window. She sat on the edge of her bed, heart pounding, and took a long, steady breath. This can't go on. I started this. I have to fix it. She walked to Emily's door and paused, her hand hovering over the wood. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if Emily doesn't forgive me? But she pushed it aside and knocked gently. Emily opened the door after a short pause, her expression cautious but not cold. She looked tired, strands of hair falling from a loose bun. But there was a softness in her eyes that Sarah hadn't seen in days. "Hey," Sarah said, her voice small but steady. "Can we talk?" Emily stepped back, giving her space to enter. Sarah walked inside, noticing the cozy details of Emily's room, the warm lamp glow, the neatly stacked textbooks, the faint scent of lavender. It felt safe, grounded. "Emily," Sarah began, her words trembling but sincere, "I need to apologize. I've been unfair. I blamed the room, the energy, even you, when really, I've just been overwhelmed. Work's been brutal, my grades aren't where I want them, and I felt like everything was spinning out of control. Wanting your room, it wasn't about the room. It was about me needing something to fix, because I didn't know how to fix myself." Emily listened quietly, her chest tightening as the tension she'd carried began to ease. She set her mug down and met Sarah's eyes. "Thank you for saying that," she replied softly. "I'm sorry too for snapping that night. I should have stayed calmer. I care about you, Sarah, but I also need to protect my space. I was scared of losing the balance I need, especially with exams coming up. I never wanted it to feel like I was choosing a room over our friendship." Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears, but she smiled faintly. "I get it now. I was so focused on what I didn't have that I forgot I could make my own space better. I don't need your room to feel okay. I just need to take care of myself." Emily's shoulders finally relaxed. "And I'll help however I can, but only if you want me to. Your room should reflect you, not me." Sarah laughed quietly, wiping at her eyes. "Then maybe you can help me pick a paint color. Something bright, something new." The following week became a quiet project of renewal. Sarah embraced the task of transforming her space with a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in months. She painted one wall a soft cream to catch the morning light, replaced heavy curtains with sheer ones that let the sun spill in, and filled the corners with thriving green plants. Each choice, every nail hammered, every picture hung felt like reclaiming a small piece of control. Emily offered help when asked, holding a ladder steady, sharing small decor tips, but mostly stood back, letting Sarah steer. Slowly, Sarah's room began to feel alive, not because of some mystical energy, but because it carried her own effort, her own care. As the apartment changed, so did their dynamic. Dinners together returned, first as cautious conversations, then as genuine laughter that stretched late into the night. The oppressive silence that once weighed on them lifted, replaced by a warm, familiar rhythm. One evening, they sat side by side on the living room couch, mugs of chamomile tea warming their hands. The lamp's soft light pooled around them, gentle and forgiving. Sarah glanced at Emily, her voice thoughtful. "You know, I kept thinking a room could fix how I felt. But it's not the room, It's me. I bring the energy to the space. Emily smiled, lifting her mug for a quiet toast. Exactly. And friendship. It's the same way. It only stays strong if we respect each other's boundaries. Sarah clinked her mug against Emily's. A small but meaningful gesture. 2 boundaries. And to not letting the universe take the blame for our problems. They both laughed. The sound light and free, carrying into the one-stance hallway. The apartment, bathed in the glow of new understanding, felt like home again, not because of cosmic alignment, but because they had both chosen to grow. The story of Emily and Sarah wasn't just about a disagreement over a bedroom. It was about the deeper truths of friendship and shared living. Living with someone, even a close friend, requires more than affection. It demands respect for personal boundaries, honest communication, and the courage to face uncomfortable emotions. Emily learned that protecting her own space isn't selfish. It's essential for mental balance. Sarah discovered that life's frustrations can't be solved by blaming the environment. Real change begins with self-awareness. A room only feels positive when you bring positive energy into it. Friendship lasts when love is balanced with respect for each other's boundaries. Their apartment didn't magically transform because of good vibes. It became a home again because they both grew.